Excellent. So hi, you all know me. My name is Lisa. I have a confession to make. I'm an architectural historian, also a 3D modeler, and I have been working on this type of work for decades, long before Ryland was even born. And I appreciate very much the opportunity to come here and share these projects with you. As an architectural historian, I care about historic buildings. I care about getting people to understand and appreciate and love them as much as I do. And that's kind of the impetus for the reconstruction work that I do. Now, for those of you who are using photogrammetry on real-world sites, I'm super jealous because I don't have that. I have an empty park, and I'm trying to reconstruct an environment. And that's kind of where my focus is on things that don't exist anymore, or things that barely exist. So today, I'm going to be using one project, VSim, to show you another, the World's Columbian Exposition of 1893. And we're just going to dive in. I'm sitting down because I'm going to do a lot of flying. So we'll start with that. And we'll start with VSim, and I'm just going to launch the VSim interface, which is deceptively simple and purposefully so. So our target audience is in-service educators, it's students, it's people who aren't into 3D content. That's not the audience we wanted. So we wanted to make the interface as simple, as non-threatening, as easy as possible to get people to engage with 3D content. So it allows three things. It allows navigation through virtual spaces. It allows the creation of linear narratives through 3D space. So think PowerPoint presentation or a Prezi, but in a 3D world, in a 3D environment. So there's movement, there's interaction, and it allows you to annotate the 3D models. Whatever kind of information you want. It could be information about the world. It could be information about the reconstruction choices. It could be information about, primary or secondary resources that you want to link in. It could be paratextual information. It could be paradata. What technology did we use, and so forth. So all of that we tried to wrap into a very, very simple layer. And we wanted to allow these models to get into the classroom. We wanted educators to feel comfortable using them. And we were also thinking about intellectual property and publication. So again, those of you who are using photogrammetry, send up some drones, press F5, model. I'm so jealous because we don't have that. So in humanities data discussions, like Chris Borgman, will talk about the hard-fought, the hard-won data that scholars are not so willing to say, I've just spent my life's work. I've spent 25 years gathering this information. I'm not quite ready to just hand it out, right? When we publish books, and no one expects you to give them all your raw notes. So VSim, we were thinking about intellectual property. What do people who are devoting careers to these kinds of projects, what protections do they need and want in a 3D model platform that's going to let them feel comfortable sharing? So VSim includes kind of behind the scenes a lot of ways to lock content. So we're sharing essentially read-only versions of the models, read-only versions of these linear narratives that go through space, read-only versions of the embedded resources. So a scholar can spend decades building something and share it without sharing everything. We also wanted to think about publication. What does a publication in a 3D space look like? We've all seen, and I've generated many of them, the written article that has pictures. Yay. We've all seen the written article that has the link to the supplementary video. Yay. We've all seen the written article with the link to spin the artifact, or a little engagement piece. What we've not really seen is, here's a 3D world that is in and of itself a publication. It can sustain prolonged interaction. You can build knowledge. You can interrogate it in many different ways. It can be linear, it can be nonlinear. It can be free-form exploration. It could be guided tours. So we were thinking about that. What does that look like? So VSim, hence VSim. So navigation, let's just start. Let's dive in. We're going to open the Columbian Exposition, if I can find it on my computer. What is our saying? Technology does technology? Okay, well, we're going to find it. We're going to open that one. And it's thinking. So the World's Columbian Exposition. I know this is everyone's favorite World's Fair, right? Of course. Held in Chicago, 1893. Only open for 6 months. Incredibly ephemeral site. It was a landmark for so many disciplines. You know, Chicago history, U.S. history, world history, women's studies, religious studies, African American studies, architecture, art history. Everybody studies the World Columbian Exposition at some point. So this for me was a very good space to start. So VSim, I'm going to get these things out of the way. We're going to start here, and we'll go full screen for the moment. Navigation. So to be generalizable, we wanted to put in a lot of different ways to navigate. So we've got WASD. So those of you who are working with Unity recognize WASD as a teaching tool. I'm going to tell you that my flying skills are not up to WASD, and I will make someone puke their guts out. So I favor the flight simulation mode, which is just kind of a simple, gentle movement through the 3D space. We can be tethered to the ground or not. You're interacting. It's fully three-dimensional, so here you can see the wireframe, point cloud, the textured version. I'm going to back up. We also have an object mode, kind of like Google Earth, where you can spin the artifact, spin the very large artifact. And finally, we have the narrative section that can help people navigate through the 3D world. So this is essentially ways, as I said, to craft those linear narratives. And each of the narratives is essentially a string of jump points. And at any point, you can press play. We'll do that. And the computer is going to take over. I don't need to do anything. And it's going to go on its own. For an instructor who's a little technology cautious, right? This is, I can do this without flying. I can talk, I can pause, I can let the narrative play out in any sort of fashion that we want. And I'm going to stop it here. So the narratives, again, thinking of that kind of publication thing, the narratives you can package with a model. You can package them independently. And let's say I have colleagues who have built amazing narratives about the Columbian Exposition. I'm going to grab a handful just to throw in. We'll look at those. Bink.
So you're importing those narratives into the project?
I'm importing those narratives into the project. So they are pre-built presentations. And this one, for example, we're bouncing around a little bit. This one, for example, is of the transportation building. And I'm pressing play. And this is something I use to talk to people about how I built these computer models. So of course, we're working with resources from contemporary magazines. Here, the elevation drawing from Inland Architect. From Engineering Magazine, the section that I'm building the bay. And from the final official report of the Director of Works, Daniel Burnham, from the Ryerson Burnham Libraries, the footprint of the Golden Door, which is the section straight ahead of us. And of course, photos, as many photos as I could possibly find of any stage of construction, whether it's from eBay or the collection of private collectors. So again, this is a narrative. I'm letting the computer do the work, so I can talk about the history of the transportation building designed by Louis Sullivan. It was kind of an incredible counterpoint to the white buildings with the Court of Honor, and it was a challenge to reconstruct, if only for the color, because it's very easy to say, oh, it's a lovely shade of ivory white, the buildings in the Court of Honor. Sullivan, no. There is stencil, there is color, there are characters and figures and molded ornament. And so this is the archival research process to bring all of that into the exposition. So layered onto this view of the transportation building, some resources, different writers, authors that talked about the color scheme of the transportation building. Here from Bannister Fletcher, if you are an architectural historian, this will have significance to you, but he says, no less than 40 different tints are used in the scheme. Mr. Sullivan's idea being that as color is in itself a good thing, you cannot have too much of it. Got to agree with that. We can get as close as we want. Here again from Millet, all the statuary of the building is treated with bronze and other metals to look like that. And we have this kind of very rich, intricate design for all of the ornament sayings about transportation. There be 3 things which make a nation great and prosperous: a fertile soil, busy workshops, and easy conveyance for men and goods from place to place. And again, all of this can be augmented as you would like. And we're going to stop with this. And I want to show you just simply how easy it is to build a narrative. Somebody toss out a number between 1 and 70.
35.
35. Okay, I'm going back to my jump points. I'm going to open that. And we're going to zoom out to whatever it is, 35. 35. Nice choice. Okay, so I'm going to go back. To build a narrative, we're going to press plus. This is the Fine Arts Building. Okay, and there we go. We have a Fine Arts Building. We're going to open it, and it's an empty slate. So we'll set in a keyframe by pressing plus, and then we navigate through the world. How about from here we do a view here, plus, and then let's go into an aerial view, maybe. Oh, I'm tethered to the ground. Apologies. The spectatorium in scaffolding in the distance, if you're a theater history fan. We'll add a key point there. We'll zoom in on the pediment, keyframe there. And let's scoot over the head of Minerva. And we'll go to the inside. So we've got 5 keyframes, which can be annotated. So we can add in LDING. Okay. Can be annotated. You can add images on top. We set up styles so you can have a visually consistent look to each narrative that saves out with each narrative. So we've got a header 1 to book or body style, label style. And you can edit those styles and it will save. But anyway, I'm going to say done there. And it all ties together. So when I hit play, it's going to go through those motions. The transitions and the timing are preset at 4 seconds each, but you can adjust those. You can say, I want a really long and slow approach to the museum. I want a really, short, fast zoom up. You can also set it to wait until you say advance. So you remember the old slideshows where there was a little beep and then you could advance? There's a wait click. So you can say, wait until I'm ready to move on. So that was a little dodgy on that one. So if we wanted to, we could stop and we could say, I want to change that transition currently at 4 seconds. Let's make that 10. So we'll go back and we'll test that. We'll just hit play and do it again. So I'm not getting, of course, very elaborate with this narrative, but one can imagine you can type in as much text as you want in whatever size you want. You can add images on top of the overlay, the keyframe, and then you can export it as a standalone element. So you can see the timing difference there. Okay, so I'm going to leave the narratives and talk a little bit about the embedded resources, which are down here. Let's go back. And I'm going to say File, Import Resources. And I'm going to search for embedded resources. So here, because I'm going to start opening up stuff outside the world, we're going to zoom back to here. The idea of the embedded resources, any types of annotations that you want to embed within the world to help a viewer understand what the space is, what it's like. So it can be things like a plan. Let's look at a plan of the Columbian Exposition. So we've got the zones we've been seeing. We are standing right here on this great pier out into Lake Michigan, around and near the Court of Honor, some of the main exhibition halls of the exposition, agriculture, machinery, mines, electricity manufacturers, along this axis of the administration building and the great statue of the Republic. Above that, to the north, the zone around Wooded Island. So here is transportation, horticulture, all of these different exhibition halls, Fine Arts Building, where we were up just a second ago, with all of the state buildings and country buildings of the exposition, and then out to the Midway to see the kind of good time zone there. So I'm going to close that. It can also be things like PDFs. Here, a guidebook to the fair. So you can read and navigate through the fair looking at the PDF. We're going to be going to the Street of Cairo to look at resources. So here I'm jumped into the PDF to say the Street of Cairo. Here we find on the Midway Plaisance, a street in the city of the caliphs is accurately reproduced as if it had been lifted bodily from the ground there and set down in its present location. So let's zip over to the Street of Cairo. And what I want you to kind of pay attention to are the embedded resources at the bottom. So again, this is information about the fair, or about the modeled environment. The resources are split between what we consider global resources, things you would care about all the time within the world. Might always want to pull up a map, and things that are spatially organized. A picture of, a certain spot on the Street of Cairo. That matters when you're at that certain spot in the Street of Cairo. We have a resource legend, which tells you I have organized these resources according to references, photos, renderings, ephemera, guides, articles, analysis, and author's notes. We can say, we don't care. Take that away. We can search. We can filter and only look at photographs. We're going to leave everything up for now, but what I want you to notice is as we move through the space, things start appearing and shifting in that local resource because it's comparing information to your location in the modeled world. So here we have the Street of Cairo. What do we have? Wedding procession. It says lantern slide of the east end of the street showing a wedding procession. Okay. So here we go. 5 times a day, a wedding procession was staged in the street of Cairo. Wedding procession. Oh, here's an illustration of the same. Okay, we'll launch that. All right, let's move through the space. You can bring up articles. The green things are things from the Chicago Tribune about the street of Cairo. We'll stop here. Sheet music. The Cairo Street Waltz. The streets of Cairo. You can bring in other file types. Audio. And I think you should be able to hear this. So contemporary music of the time, silly things, yes, sometimes. Dancing theater was the scandal of the Columbian Exposition. We're scantily clad, well, maybe not by our standards, presented scandalous dances, and we don't have, of course, video of that, but we do have from not too much later, Thomas Edison, who in 1898, I believe, captured this exotic dancer. A very short clip, one of my favorites. Wait for it. This is the scandalous part. Wait for it. Anyway, so the point of VSim is to bring this into the classroom, to get educators willing to use this type of technology in their classrooms. So it supports teacher-centered presentations in lectures, large format classes. We can do projections. So teacher-centered presentations. They can use legacy content. They can use pre-made narratives. They can make their own narratives. They can add their own embedded resources. They can give student assignments within the world. The students can do all of those same things. Explore the narratives, use a guide, look at spaces, build their own knowledge. And my goal is to get this into the classroom, and I hope that I've convinced you that it's a viable option. So thank you for your attention, and I look forward to our demo session.
So before we open it up to questions, we're going to hear a comment from
You're going to stand up.
Who's associate professor
Am I
of
going to go over here?
Rochester.
Okay, I'm going to go
Oh,
over
my
here.
goodness, sorry. Co-professor of history of Rochester.
Yes. Still getting used to it myself.
And who spoke to us yesterday if you were here on the Kormantin Project. Thank you.
Well, I have to say, wow. I think, yes, you definitely are succeeding, and this is a pretty powerful platform. And yes, some of the things I'm trying to do, this would have been another path to doing a lot of this. And I appreciate that in terms of form and function with you and your work, we get a twofer. Not only do we get a digital platform that empowers many hopefully future DH practitioners, but we also get this very careful consideration of an important moment in place in American history. You talk a lot about the pedagogy of this, people using this to sort of teach. I see it as a scholar, as this is a fantastic, if you will, archival organizational tool as well, and that putting together all of this information, and yet in the 3D space you allow us to sort of access and put things in. All my photos, my maps, my scenes, my documents, I can array, not in folders in a hard drive, but actually situated in the space. So I think spatially situated storytelling is both what VSim does and what you're very much doing, demonstrating for the World Columbian Exposition rather. I played BioShock in Maybe it's like the architecture, the costumes, but it's like, the flashbacks. So a couple things, and maybe this is sort of a bigger conversation that ties a bunch of things together. I was very much thinking about and mindful of what I call the Kevin Costner conundrum. In Field of Dreams, he says, if we build it, they come. And I think I've certainly been sort of haunted, shaped by that for the last bunch of years, in that you remind us digital heritage work, digital history, digital humanities, there's a lot of hard work in creation. We work hard on the tools, we work hard on the heritage spaces, we then work hard on the interpretations that happen therein. And the building of these things, each of us in our individual projects, this building is all consuming. We're so focused on it, the technical, the design side, realizing the vision and the goals that we can imagine. And like Pygmalion, we fall in love with the things we make because we're so focused on them. And the problem comes with promotion and dissemination. I remember yesterday somebody asked me, how are you going to disseminate this? I didn't have a very good answer or very clearly thought out. And really, what we need is a campaign, a strategy to put as much attention in making the world aware of the incredible things we do as we put into making them in the first place. Again, going back to our parallels with films and video games, the film industry has we're still in those Nickelodeon days, but fast forward, the film, they have your interviews, they have your trailers, they have your movie posters. There's a very long, sophisticated way of making sure they get butts and seats and dollars in box office. I think video games are less, big video games will almost sell themselves when they break out. And video games, like, by a magnitude outsell and outgross movies. Like, in a weekend, Battlefront will make $1 billion. So our digital heritage projects, digital heritage, digital humanities, broadly, I think we're still waiting for our killer app. The thing that actually makes the world sort of even have DH on their horizon. Like documentaries, Ken Burns' Civil War, for documentaries was this kind of pivoting moment that documentaries became a thing people recognized, looked for, and then, a generation has followed in the path there. So VSim is, in some ways, a little like, but a much more better, sophisticated version of Sketchfab in terms of the annotation part of it. It's very cool. It's incredibly useful in lots of different ways. So why isn't it everywhere? Why isn't everyone using it? You want everyone to use it. You want it to get in classrooms. If I knew about it, I probably would be doing my own thing quite differently here. So why isn't it everywhere? And that's the sort of promotion, dissemination, consciousness reasoning that I think we're all struggling with and all should kind of think more about it. So it's sort of like, we have built it, now how do we get them to come? So I would pose that to you. How do you make more people aware of this incredible resource you have so that your hard work actually changes things and advances the field? Trying to answer that, one little bit I thought about, is free the problem? We're all dedicated to sharing and disseminating the work that we want for free. We're often getting NEH or other funds, which we want to, therefore, give money to. Well, we're in a capitalist society that sometimes equates value with price. And if it's free, it might be worthless. Whereas if you pay for something, you literally have to buy it. Oh, well, this movie's terrible, but I spent $10 on it to watch it. So I don't know how we can get people to pay for, or even if we want to, I think there's a conundrum. On the one hand, I want these things to be free, accessible, no barriers to education. We want, on the other hand, as consumers and users, maybe some cost actually makes them take our work seriously. So that's not sort of a question so much as you've done incredible things. You've created an incredible place with rich detail and a great intricate story to tell. How do you get people to embrace it?
Shall I respond?
Yes, please.
All of us, that's a huge, huge, huge problem. I don't think when any of us wrote our grant proposals, we said, and I'm going to add another year of my time to publicize it, right? Or the publicity campaign that is needed for something like this, it's, the circuit of conferences, it's press releases to all the right places, it's, working with the NEH to publicize, it's having people on the back end to support the user questions. It's huge and challenging. I mean, if somebody said, I can't get my model to load, it's like, okay, I'll troubleshoot that with you, but it's going to take some time. Let's schedule a Zoom, and suddenly that time doesn't exist. So it's challenging. So, I mean, you're right. We all need to think about that and think about better ways to get these products out into the world. For me, I know that part of me is like, when is it enough to distribute? As you'll see in the demo, parts of this are a little dodgy, and you kind of go, oh, Lisa, what do you. But when is it good enough? And certainly if you're going to charge for it, when is it good enough to charge for it, right? There's an expectation of product that is frightening, and I welcome your thoughts on that. Yes?
So I have just sort of some basic questions about the platform, and I was hoping you could sort of explain to us where it came from, what your relationship is with the platform. Did you invent VSim?
Yes.
Okay, and how is it supported? What platforms is it available on?
Right.
Where, so what is this product
Right,
beyond
right,
the
right.
demo that you showed us?
What did you use to make it?
The Visual Studio. So it's written in C++,
Okay.
Visual Studio.
Cool.
It's actually the fourth piece of software to interact with these types of computer models that I have used in my career.
Okay.
The first was a Linux-based one, very much driven by client demands for a group that I worked with called the Urban Simulation Team, where we were doing a lot of for-service projects with developers in downtown LA, making a virtual LA model. The Los Angeles World Airport, UCLA, previs uses our services to previs everything on campus before it's constructed. So a lot of the bits of that was to support the client requirements. That transitioned to a horrible Windows-based, I shouldn't say that, a Windows-based bit of software that was full of GUIs and you had to link and open, and it was terrible. Then we did a VSim prototype, which had the basic features but needed support and enhancements. And then we did this VSim version. So it supports, we use ASIMP, A-S-S-I-M-P, as an import library. So it can import a lot of different model types. And it's on Windows and it's on Mac. Although I don't think it works with the latest OS of Mac. So now we have to get a new programmer to come in, recompile, and add in features.
Okay. And we is you and who else?
Me, Francesca,
Cool.
working with my office,
Great.
is helping me on this. And
support comes from UCLA.
Our Office of Advanced Research Computing, but it's not like we're a line item on the budget by any stretch of the imagination. I do have small pots of money from presentations that I do at the Museum of Science and Industry that they charge for the presentations, and we do like a 2-hour tour of the exposition, and they give me a slice of the profits. And so I have a little fund for the Columbian Exposition.
Great. Yeah. Those
Yeah.
are mine.
Curtis.
So I want to thinking about what Mike was saying about, so there's something, how do we disseminate? And why isn't everybody using it? Because it's yeah. In some ways, essentially what we all need, right? It have the kind of interactive, the programmable interactive piece of this that brings together all of our assets built by why are we all and I think there's in some ways the distinction to be made between projects that are publications and projects that are tools. The projects that are publications, I think it probably is mostly dependent on us, or it relies on us to kind of promote those things. But one of the reasons I think that the tools aren't often used as much as they should, because as scholars we tend to just use what was off the shelf, and we go look into those platforms that mostly pretty often open source platforms, or better yet, platforms that are built by scholars to do our work. Just grab whatever is kind of handy. 2 years ago was Flash. Now it's really invest in a fall because and to take a job. I think it would behoove all of us to think more about finding those platforms out there who be so much more built by more scholars. And to hear this that part of the piece, I think, is that we building these projects should be looking for tools that are built by our colleagues to build our projects, and so part of this message relies on us.
I think I want to add to that a little bit is that the projects need to open up an opportunity for enhancements. I mean, like our stuff is on GitHub, but if I show this to somebody, this is VSim as it exists now, they'll be like, well, I want to measure things. Oh, okay, I don't have a measurement tool. I want to export it for use on the web. Okay, I don't have a WebGL version. So it seems like there's so many kind of personal requirements that one software is not going to rule them all, but we need to be able to say, we have this as the basis. If you want to hire a programmer to add in a measurement tool, yay. And let's keep building this as a community.
That's something like what we do is I get 100 requests every week where people will be like, I want Scalar to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And so there's always a negotiation. It's like, great, if you have money, let's build that out. If it's something small, we might be able to do it ourselves. But then there's also sorry, this is what it does. This, and we do the same thing with Unity and other platforms. It's just that they do more. But I think there also needs to be like this overall sort of conscious decision by all of us to say, even if the platforms that are built by and for scholars don't do as much, I think that we should be thinking about using them. And maybe there's a negotiation there, or maybe there's a compromise there. It can't do everything, but it could do a lot of what we want, and we should use it anyway. Because if we all just use Unity and 10 years it goes away, we're in trouble.
Or they change their fee structure.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was going to put it on. I was going to put it on the video wall when we started. Yeah. Or they change their fee structure. Yeah.
So I can just jump on that.
Yeah.
So why do we think that Scale is going to be around in 10 years?
We don't.
Okay. So then why would we use it rather than Unity? Because Unity seems, for the sake of conversation, Unity is a multi-billion-dollar company. It seems more likely to be around in 10 years than Scale.
If Unity goes away, how are you going to modify it?
Well, the same question can be said of Scale or any of these sort of scholarly productions.
But if you have access to the Git repository and can pick it up
Okay, so it's...
and move forward.
So it's not scholarly resources, it's open source resources.
I would say it's two things. It's open source,
Yeah.
but also if it's built sort of by and for scholars, it's embedded in the community. If we as a community start to adopt those platforms that are in tools that are built by our colleagues more aggressively, then we start to build a community where it's known. If Omeka goes away, someone else can pick it up. If Omeka goes away, enough people now know Omeka and have built plugins for it, and it can easily get adopted somewhere else. right?
Yeah.
We want all of our platforms to be in the situation of something like Omega or Zotero is in, or like if the Center for History and New Media blew up,
Yeah.
you know, like
So
it
you
could,
go to Zotero.
someone could pick up
Yeah.
Zotero.
Right. But
Yeah.
that's again on the open source. That's just because it's open source.
It's open source, but it's also been adopted by so many other practitioners
Right.
and colleagues of ours.
Yeah.
Blender would be a good example of
Yeah.
a non-corporate thing that has evolved and is very wide concern.
Right. Right.
Thank you so much for the sharing, Professor Snyder. I have two questions. The first one is about, is there a mode combining the embodied resources mode and the narrative mode? So I noticed that there are going to be two windows when you show like the embodied resources mode. But for me, it's a little bit like separate from the immersion. And the second question goes to, it's really nice to have this like non-linear immersive narrative, and I really appreciate it, just like you said, it's actually very simple. You just need to combine the different clips. So we have this open space, like as a journey, where to go and what to speed you're going to take. But however, I feel like all the audiences are playing one role as a visitor or a guest. So is there any possibility that we can make it more playful? Or like, just like we can have different roles. We can really affect the plot or like affect the exposition itself.
Right.
Like for example, if you want this mindfulness, like wandering around this place, you can do that, just like you showed. But if you want to have a mission, make it like more like a game.
Right.
I can also, for example, if I am a theater lover, my mission is going to be produce this show. If I want to do this, I have to visit this kind of places, communicate with people there, so that I can produce this show. So I just got this.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's great. The first question is simple. Yes, you can combine the two. I was splitting out the narratives from the embedded resources just to describe them, but you can certainly craft a narrative that can play out through 3D space and at the same time trigger other resources that might be of interest to somebody who is watching that. So they will certainly come up. You know, in terms of other roles and introducing challenges within the environment, yes. Things we've thought about, like different points of view. You know, you could certainly have embedded resources in a category about, you know, women's roles in the Columbian Exposition, and then you can just, as a user, filter out everything else and only look at those links, and you can say, show all, and let me show all of the ones related to women's roles, and I'm just going to click on them one by one and go through. In the same way, you could introduce a challenge. You know, here's a task, and you filter off that kind of task category, and you just move through the space that way. Yes.
So I just want to say this is incredible, and I'm already dragging all of my PowerPoints that deal with spatial analysis into the trash, so that I can start using VSim right away. My question is, how well does this handle really large data sets? I mean, like millions of polygons, dozens of DK textures. Are there limitations here that someone like me face?
There are limitations always, and it's kind of the hardware. So the model of the exposition is built within flight simulation software, and it very specifically includes carefully crafted levels of detail so that when I am here, you know, I am the center of the universe and things are detailed around me, but not in the distance. So it's you know, if I showed all polygons within this model at one time, it would grind to a halt, right? It's that detailed. I don't know the statistics on this, but I think it's well over 2 million polygons, which, yeah. But again, I'm used to being very data efficient. So this model is 500 meg, maybe, total for the exposition. And the exposition property is about, you know, over a square mile of buildings and structures and plantings. The challenge and the limitation is when you bring in, a brute force photogrammetric model that's 200,000 polygons, 1 million polygons, and it's just all there all the time. There's no level of detail attached to it. So anytime you're navigating through it, it's going to be a challenge for your computer. In terms of movement, moving forward is easier because the changes in the scene are not so radical. A pan, where it's like, hitting new geometry all the time, and you're going to see chug, 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 chug latency. So it will work up to a point, and you just have to find it.
Okay, so it sounds more like a hardware limitation, not like the software that really struggles to render.
Yeah, it's more the hardware and latency.
Okay, so kind of a follow-up question. Is there potentially, maybe something in the pipeline where you're thinking about using this as a kind of a layer over like existing game engine software? Right? So I do a lot of work in Unreal. The Unity fans in the audience here, I wonder if there's a way to kind of make use of this that doesn't have, so that you can draw upon the resources of other places. It's really powerful.
Oh, I think that would be amazing. What I'd like to see is kind of the scholarly elements, how can we annotate models, how can we link out to primary and secondary resources, and how can we craft those linear narratives to bring things into a classroom and to share arguments about a space. So what would have to happen is those platforms would need to say, oh, you know what, this is actually an interesting business model for us to take on. And I don't know that they would be willing to do that, but it would be an interesting conversation to have.
We're going to pause here and shift to the demos. Please continue these conversations in the demo spaces. Curtis, who's where?
Everyone's over on that side.
Everybody's over
Me
on
too?
this side.
Okay.
Terrific.
Okay.
This is just the two, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Everyone's over there.
Okay.